We now have Eoin Warner from Bantry. He's next generation David Attenborough. Great interest in wildlife and nature, and he's been involved in a number of documentaries. One of the most recent ones was the one on Skellig Michael, is it?
Yeah.
And I remember myself being in Skellig Michael a number of years ago, and it was one of these perfect days, and it was like, nature at its best. It's one of these phenomenal places to be on an exceptional day. So maybe you might tell us your interest and how it developed in nature.
Yeah, I suppose I'd have to situate myself first, and even situate. I remember my first time coming out to the island, and it was, the school was open at the time. It's the first time I remember. It was in the mid-80s. I was an altar boy, and at the time the stations would be on in the springtime and the autumn time, and you'd always try and get a station in the morning time, as I mentioned, you get a few hours off school. But the big one to get was get the Quiddy station, because you get the whole day off school. And I managed to get the Quiddy station off once, and it was actually to Mary's father Jim, and it was your station back west. And I remember arriving with the canon and another priest at the pier, and all the beetle miners were lined up. And if I got to the Beatles, the best one for the priest, and then we got into the back one. And it was just a great experience to go all the way back to the island, and the whole parlour and all that. Anyway, I grew up about 2 miles outside of town, heading towards Balliniggy. It's a town called Carr, and the house is up in a bit of a hill, and we overlook Donegal Lake and the eastern point of Whitty and Bantry Bay and the Carr Mountains behind it, and the Shelly Mountains and Clough-Boy. So it's a very inspiring spot, I suppose, to grow up. But for me, growing up, the biggest thing was the backfields. We had these fields behind us that I used to spend my time in all the time. And my earliest memory of the house and nature, I suppose, was standing in the back garden looking at the cows chewing the cud and being absolutely entranced and couldn't believe these huge animals that were so close to me and just chewing away. And I'd be out for hours just watching them. The big thing for me was when I come home from school was to throw off the bag and head over the ditch into the back fields, and this was my little wonder world or whatever. And there was a great mix of habitats from there was a stream at the bottom of it, there was a little woodland, hazel and blackthorn woodland, and there was ditches and everything else. And there I'd wander for hours at a time, and I felt very much, I suppose, at home and at peace, I suppose, in the place. And I'd often just sit in the ditch and sit there for maybe an hour or 2 hours, and after a while you'd almost become the ditch, and nature would slowly reveal herself to you, and the spider would start to finish laying its web, and the birds would start to sing, and the rabbits would start eating grass, whatever. And I suppose as a hobby or whatever you want to call it, it taught me great skills of just patience and observance. And even to this day, you can see things that a lot of people don't see. And even we saw the latest, the lockdown from COVID, where people were hearing birds for the first time, and they were contacting Birdwatch Ireland saying, "Are there more birds?" But it's just, they're there singing away, but we can't even hear them because of noise, or people haven't the time to listen to them. So it's a great thing to be able to have when you're younger, to experience that. And I suppose as I grew up, it was a great thing to be able to go back to. We all face our own issues with teenage years and older years, and to be able to escape back to that bubble where you really felt a sense of silliness and just chill out. But I'm sure the neighbours, when they saw me wandering the fields, they thought it was poor Warner from his fierce lonely, but nothing like. But I never felt lonely at all. I felt completely, all the nature around me was.
And over the years, you keep coming back here very regularly. What has changed in nature in Bantry over the last 20, 30 years?
It's hard to say, I suppose. Recently, the World Wildlife Information came out that in the last 50 years, since 1970, that over 2/3 of vertebrates, the populations of animal backbone birds, whales, fish, birds, mammals, whatever, have disappeared in our lifetime. And that's because we have this increasing population that's growing, and we have a runaway consumption rate, this constant consumption, and we're on a planet of limited finite resources, but our population is going this way, and that's having a big impact on habitat loss and resultantly on various wildlife. And I suppose sometimes we view ourselves as being separate to the ecosystem, that we're kind of different species altogether, but we are animals and very much part of the ecosystem. And one thing we do understand is that if you affect one part of the ecosystem, there's a knock-on effect, and we can see that now with climate change and everything else that's happening in the world. But I think it's sliding scale in the sense that what I a different sliding marker all the time. So it's hard to say, but even in our own land, in our own times, there's great memories of some people, corn crakes and curlews and all sorts, but slowly it's disappearing. But you don't see it in your own lifetime often the time.
When did you get into documentaries, or how did it come about?
That's a very hard, I don't know how it came about really. I got a phone call one day from John Murray from Crossing the Line, and that was, I suppose it was 6-7 years ago, and I was in Bantry at the time, and he said that he was looking for someone to do, that they were doing a co-production with BBC on the West of Ireland, and that they were doing a co-production with TG Carr as well, and they were looking for another presenter. And I said to him, listen, I said, John, I think you're the wrong fella, because I've no aspirations to be on television. And he said, that's exactly why I want. We want someone who isn't a personality, we want someone who just is passionate about what they do and enjoy. So that's, he asked me when we were going to start, he said, let's get Michael. He said that I was excited. The idea of spending the night out there was magic for me. So we went out, and I was completely nervous as hell, because I didn't know, I'd never done anything like it before. And we were carrying all the gear up all the steps, getting ready and everything else, and eventually I said to John, I said, is there a script, is there what do you want me to say? And he said, no, sit down there, I said, tell me what you see and tell me how you feel. And that's how they go. So it's just about talking for ages, and after a while you might talk for an hour, 2 hours, and they just take it and say that they think it's worth.
How many hours went into that hour production?
Overall, it was 2 hours in total for that documentary, and it took 3 years to make.
3 years.
And the vast majority of that is in the actual filming of the animals, because they did a piece on Red Deer, and we can show a piece in a second and stuff, but they did a piece on the Red Deer, and that would happen over 3 years, and the cameramen going down were spending 2 weeks each year in a hide, going in the darkness of dawn, staying there all day, peeing in a bottle, being eaten by midges, just to get 1 or 2 of those great shots. And of course, you're against the weather all the time in Ireland as well, which is difficult. But they're the real heroes of the documentaries.
There's something really special about getting up on a summer's morning, really early, before the dawn. The solitude, the mist, the light. It's just magical. And what I really love is when the sun starts to rise, the light catches everything from the side. And then you get the first glimpse of the fallow deer amongst the trees. When you mention the Phoenix Park, you think of Uachtaráin na hÉireann or the zoo. But the reason that the Phoenix Park is here is because of the deer. The deer were imported here from Wales by the Duke of Ormond in 1662 for hunting purposes. And it's amazing to think that 350 years later, this park is still here, and the descendants of those very deer still roam these beautiful parkland fields. And at this stage, they have serious squatters' rights, probably even more so than the president. And although the fallow deer are very sociable animals, always staying together in herds, within the park, they keep in very disparate areas. All of the bucks are together on one side of the park, and on the other side of the park are all the does and their young. And it kind of reminds you of the old country dances, with the males on one side and the females on the other, eyeing each other up, until the first dance in October, when it all kicks off. At a first glance at these bachelor groups of bucks, they seem to be just grazing the grass, serenely sitting around, chewing the cud. But physiologically, there's some huge changes happening. What's really unique about these mammals is how they regenerate bone on their skulls, year upon year. March and April, as the days begin to get longer, the old set of antlers are cast, and the new set begin to grow. These grow at a tremendous rate of almost 1/4 of an inch a day, the fastest growing tissue in any mammal species. And in terms of ourselves as other mammals, it would be like losing one of your large bones, like your leg, and regrowing it within a 100-day period. And the sole reason for all of this energy, all of this investment in growing this set of antlers is to be able to mate during the rut, to attract females and to fight off any rivals. All of this to ensure that your genetics are passed on to the next generation. And it's a really rare opportunity for anyone to have a green space this big next to the capital city.
Níl míideach lethúir a clicó mín tír, so inis tuaisgurt leis tír doing, agus branta gúil tú dawn eile, go thomláin. As go húntaach choúd an elfina bhégaing a sá. As siad nan snáb có tapig donna, is geall étailte. Go híoming.
Sin úntas na mara. Nuair a bhíonn tú muthar a bharige, ceapan tú go bhfuiln tú leat féin, ach ní bhíonn cleachta na mara bhadúirt riamh. An delf chuitin is tuaiscí thuig cút, mar chóisir mara fé láin seol iad gur sprí leat. Is minic áfach nach míon na delfina in an éanair.
Sné díirech é fechar son, aha! Dochreite. Dochreite. Nach ateach, a feig tréis an son bhí gachard cociún, agus go toban, nuair an tagan an míl mór dronach i dí bar nisce, dus ahríonn an fuinibh, agus ag gach éan agus gach delf ag snáb bhí an pointe seo. Tá sé toman is díoch síos fé nisce chun an curtín seo nó an curcail súlíní a chur timpeall chun na héisbeagach léir a máint seachsa in éon líráid a bháin, éon peiste bháin agus an tagann sé níos fúthór. Tá sig na héine gúil sé teachta ríis mar tá siad fáiltear bís agus na delfín ar fad a delfían fan fechaniste. Fechaniste cinnta na súlíní ar fad. Far amach an béal mór. Códrama túl, códríoch túl a bheith láthar sa. Agus a gach hena bheile díriú ar siúd, mar seisnatá i déanamh an obair a fadóibh, agus céad broscar nó iasca tá fácar in iag, téann siad trín díreach in iag chun é a háilt. Tá an airgurs bio fel láthir, bio. Bucket list, tick.
Éon uair na ferm sisteach a drón heileáin na blascéadaí. Si dechar gan smaoine bhar na daoine bhí mar eachtan dána feig na céanta. I ggéir saoil a bhaint amachchas an carraigh go lámsan. Saoil láin cruaitin lár na farige. A ceantas na scéalta searlam féin ceola bhí a costócha an scéal san fé port na bóchaí. Bhí na ladzig rábhíocht san éhóg idir níl an tír agus ina sé go leáin agus go toban chúdar an ceol san. Ceol dríochtúil, taobhsiúil bhí teachtain níos an bharige. Bhí fid léirs de bháid agus ghlach sé leis an bort. dúis feastaidir beidir gur ceolta siomh bhían, ach tá túrim bhaithnis an beidir gur ceol an míl mór nach a bhían. Is stas an smuoine bheith áfach gur raibh tionachar ag anamh na farige ar ceol na naoine, agus gúil an port céan a gúil sé fós a himint na dúthaí seo. Mina gainte sa có garad san dóibh, sa táim sé níos cían tú an linir tá ina dá húil dubh. Tá rud atá có beag, tá gaile de chreatige. Tá an tád arglum, a bheith an láthar an sonú, déad fór ágad an tá rúlam. Tag an fuilech an óir, díirech an am, rih hecht a gíre. Beg leant an ráte rive, agus a gach seft ar ólas ag an éirúa, chun a chuid a chur a daisce. Tá an dáchan is an, bhí spríle chéile bhfuil. Bhí nach bhfuil ag spríon éair, bhí sé gúil an ceart ceann se ag bagart leis fan amach bhfuil a chuid se. Tá nirid sin beocht sa chail ag an amsan na bliain, bhí gréirú bailú bíad an gíratá róing. Bheith có garad, de anamh fiáin, de chreite.
And where do you see nature, the trajectory of where it's going at the moment? Biggest alarm bells?
I think there's a huge... We're very lucky in Ireland, in this part of Ireland, in West Cork, and even on this peninsula, in the sense that the very first recorder of natural history in Ireland was from Jersey Island. Don Philip was one there, and he was born in 1590. He would have left as an exile to Spain after the battle of Conserving when he was 12 years old, when General Carew came and slaughtered all around him. But he wrote an amazing book called The Natural History of Ireland. He wrote 4 volumes of various books, and they were taught to naturalist, Gerald Gray's. He wrote a book in 12th century when he was over visiting some of his Norman cousins about Ireland. It was very much written from the colonisers' perspective, and very much was a propagandist in this way, depicting the Irish as being very barbaric and backward and everything else. So they kind of justified what their campaign was in Ireland over the next couple of hundred years. And so that was a canonic text, a reference text during the Middle Ages. And then this man, Don Philip, something there, he decided to write a book which found fault with all the things that he was saying from a personal experience. And they were both written in Latin, which was kind of the vernacular of the learned of the day. But interestingly enough, all the birds and animals that he mentions in it, he gives them their names in 4 languages. Irish language was very much the spoken language of the area, and so it made complete sense for him to mention those good names. But it's a lovely record. But he would have been, I suppose, the David Attenborough of his day, going back to the last 300-400 years. And so we've had a great record all the way through to the present day. But it's very challenging. And even in this day, we have everything from potential things like mechanical harvesting of hundreds of acres of kelp. There's proposals to have giant salmon farming. There's proposals to have, already there's fishing of sprat in the area. And these are all individual, private corporations looking to use these natural assets that belong to all of us as citizens for profit and for private gain, which will have a knock-on effect because it affects the ecosystems for all of us. And it's just ironic that we will protect the whales, we'll protect seabird colonies, we'll have quotas for the fish that we eat, like cod and haddock and everything else. But yet we've nothing there to protect the sprat that is the base layer that feeds all of these things. And we're allowed to bring trawlers, air trawlers in here in the autumn time, and the sprat report huge shoals in Dunman's Bay and Bantry Bay, and they scoop them up, and they're of no food value for us, but they're just used for fertilizer and for fish food, and they're landed at a price that's less than general waste. But so there's a lot of questions like that, which is unfortunate, and we need to, I suppose, we have to be very careful as citizens. If we wanted to build a sustainable community in these areas, you have to take care of the natural resources and have something that isn't a boom and bust sort of economic solution. It has to be sustainable for the likes of the layers can have their children here and their grandchildren here. We were speaking earlier on about the huge pilchard fishery that was here back at the turn of the last century, and 150 local men supported their families working in this fishery, and then the big trawlers come in and then that collapses, and how it impacts the local population in a big way. So we just as citizens we have to be aware of that in our community to make sure that we don't get run over as much. Not like that, I hope that isn't too political, but it's how I feel.
And what do you think is the best to educate the young people and for them to appreciate the value of nature?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, because for me, my main motivation and the motivation of a lot of us who are involved with the documentaries for making these documentaries isn't about creating entertainment, Norman shape that goes in television screens. It's about hopefully inspiring people to go out and enjoy what's on their doorstep. And it's amazing what we have here, but especially to inspire young people, because the childhood we had is very different to the childhood that's there today, and the amount of pressures and technology and telephones and social media and everything else, that having that escape that they can go to on their doorstep is really important. And it's so important that they experience it at a young age, because if they know it, there's a chance that they'll love it and they'll mind it. But if they're not aware of what's around them, they won't be minded of it. It's a great thing I found. No matter what age you are, you can enjoy nature. Whether you're a 4-year-old child or an 84-year-old person, you can get out there and enjoy it. And it's a great way to experience the change in the seasons, because everything in life and society these days is so monocultural, monolinguistic, mono-clothing. Everything is the same, and it's great to have dialectical differences or just things that are a little bit different. And that's one thing about working outdoors or being outdoors in all the seasons of the year. You see all those changes, and it's a natural way. And it's how we evolved in this part of the country, is people would have lived very much close to nature, working in the seasons, very much manual labour, working with agriculture and fisheries. And they would have seen all those markers changing, and I suppose it's a shame that we've kind of created this gap between it and nature now. It's really important that we give children the opportunity to get out to nature and to experience it. So I would say to anyone, whether you have a child, a grandchild, a neighbour's child, bring them out and let them experience it.
Very good. Anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up?
That's it.
Just as we were talking about Skellig Michael, just one of the memories I have as well is the puffins out there.
Yeah.
There's a big colony, but they're such a beautiful bird. And it was the first time I came close to one.
Yeah.
And it was just, of course, they were featured then on Star Wars, is it?
Well, they had a version of them.
Well, we say a synthetic version of them or an artificial version of them, but they're a fabulous feature out there.
Yeah, and Skellig Michael, there's no doubt there's a reason why the monks went out there and found this. When they felt they were closer to God or getting away from society to get there, but it is a magical place. I was lucky enough for the next documentary we were out there, and we got stormbound out there this time of year last year nights, and it was just amazing to be up in the actual monastic settlement at night time. We were recording the storm petrels, but it's Ireland's magic beach. It's just the most beautiful spot. Yeah.
So maybe you might sing another song for us before you go.
You mentioned earlier on after we sang that we were talking about how it gave us an insight into what life in Ireland was like at the time. This next song is a song called the Lines of the White Rock, and it was collected in Adrigo, and there's a bit from here. And it's a macaronic song where the verses of the song alternatively in Irish and English to, at the time, obviously catering. It was a sign of language shift and it catered for the population who spoke Irish and also spoke English as well. But it's a love song. I give it a blast. I haven't sang it for a while, but give it a go.
Quanto dai no
good as your word, it is you, of course, I'd rather. So awake, lower eyes, my lingering by, and come with me in the morning, and we will know the briny wells from the banks of Carrigaline.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Well done.
This is a song that I learned from the singing of Libo Croneen from Ballingeary, and he got it from Eilish Nicoma, who was originally from Ballyvorney, and she was a granddaughter of West Cronin. And West Cronin was originally from Cooley and Ballyvorney, and she was, I suppose, recognised as the queen of West Cork singing. A huge amount of songs were collected from her in the 1950s from Ryan Liddisairen, RT, BBC, and even a man by the name of Alan Lomax, who was an American folk collector. But it collected amazing stuff from her, and we are very lucky to have it. And I suppose it shows how ephemeral the oral tradition is. That it's the only version of it that I'm aware of. Anyway, I'll give it a blast. The song is called The Canterbury Murder, and it happened in 1896, just on the road here between Cairkill and Camanea, and it's a true story based on real events, and I shall talk a little bit about it afterwards. One and all on you I call your attention now, I pray. I'll sing for you a verse or two of a sad and mournful tale. Doubtlessly you must have heard of that life I so we did identify me claim and told the story as it was, all to my grief and shame. So now my song is ended and my time is coming on by the forces of the crown bound in an iron band by jury of my countrymen. There is no chance for me but transportation all my life or step the gallows tree.
So, is it really Cronin from Ballin? Is she a great singer or is it really Maureen, no?
From Ballingary, is it?
Or Ballin, is it?
Well, best known was with the lady from the 1950s who was there.
This girl now again.
She's the Homa. She's the granddaughter of hers. She's
Granddaughter.
Yeah.
Fabulous.
She's a fabulous voice as well.
She's super good, yeah.
But one thing I suppose about this song is an example of it. I was reading a book recently by Callan McLean. He was a folklorist from Scotland, from the Hebrides, and he wrote a book called The Highlands in 1959. And his opening lines about it is that all people and all lands have two histories. There's the written history, which is the history that tells the facts that are wanted to be told or are officially told, politically correct, I suppose. And then there's the other history, the oral history, which includes everything. And that's one thing I think that's very important about what we have in Ireland is our oral history gives us a window and an opportunity to view what life was like, what the traditions were, how people felt, their habits and so on and so forth. And we're very lucky, I suppose, in this country that we have had the Folklore Commission collect so much information over the years, including the schools collection and so on and so forth. But when you're able to, on this occasion, Angela managed to find the article from 1896 of the actual murder trial and what happened, and so that's the official report. And when you're able to get both sources and bring them together, you get a very rich understanding as to what life was like and so on and so forth. And there's a few things the song tells us, I suppose. First of all is that it was the judicial system was very different. It was the British Crown was involved at the time, and if you killed someone, it was the penalty of death, or else you were transported off to penal colonies for a lot lesser offences as well. But one thing that struck me was the idea of language shift, and a lot of local historians might not put as much weight on the amount that the importance of the Irish language in this area even, up until the mid 1850s, maybe 19th century. There was 3 million Irish speakers in the west of Ireland, and certainly in this area, and certainly Cappaway would have been an Irish speaking area, and then the trauma of the famine changed a lot of that. But more than likely, Jim Wren's parents would have been Irish speakers, more than likely Jim's Irish speaker himself, and when they went into the judicial system, they probably wouldn't have understood very much of what was happening. It was such an official thing, and that's also recorded in the likes of the Mount Trosna murders, where all of the people involved were Irish speakers, and they couldn't understand anything that was going on, and they brought in an Irish speaker from Donegal to be able to translate things, and couldn't understand him either. It was an absolute mess. But so there's things like that. You can imagine the parents being very worried about what was happening and not being able to understand the judicial system. There's things like the reason for the murder was a disagreement over a dowry being paid, and the importance of arranged marriages and the importance of a dowry. And Wren himself was married 3 months earlier, and it's recorded in the paper that the dowry that was given with his wife was £80 and a heifer, which was a huge amount of money at the time. And you can see how, in a smaller community, the impact of something like this would have had on people's and later generations as well. But I suppose because of the impact of the famine and how that affected, and the trauma that affected so many people and immigration and so on, after the post-famine, and Wren would have been born, he was 35 when he died, so he was born in 1861, so he was very much kind of the next generation after the famine. That in order to marry, you had to demonstrate that you could support a family and support a wife. And for that reason, often you had a lot of marriages where older men were arranged to marry young women. And you can imagine nowadays if you told your daughter that, by the way, we're chosen to and most people at that time, as Jim Wren did at times, they got married in the bride's home rather than in the church. So there's a few things like that that just gives you a glimpse into what life was like at that time.